Hey, this is David again, Fairly Secret Music. Today I'm going to talk about black metal, stuff that I listen to, bands that in the genre that I actually really enjoy. Let me turn this thing here. Nope, no, no. Oh, there we go. There we don't get so much glare. Lately, I've been in a foul mood. And the thing that gets me out of bad moods, strangely enough, is black metal. The more depressing, the better. So I will leave the last few bands that I've been listening to a lot of at the end of this video. So when black metal first came about, obviously Darkthrone were one of the first that I would have known about. I remember working at a record store and Blaze in the Morning Sky ended up coming out, and me and the guy who did all the receiving just thought, what the hell is this? And we didn't listen to it. We were too busy listening to Earth 2. Remember that album? 3 tracks, 56 minutes or something like that. And it was all just heavy as shit with no drums. So I got into black metal later, around 95. I got into some of the black metal bands. I was listening to a lot of My Dying Bride and stuff like that at the time. And so my first black metal band I really got into was Cradle of Filth, but I will get to them in a second. First of all, I would like to actually say, so the only Darkthrone album I actually have is Soulside Journey, and this is when they were more of a death metal band, almost a technical death metal band, if a little bit, you know. It's been a long time since I listened to this, but they were really way more death metal on this one, with the production was pretty darn good. I remember after a while, like, they would say things like, you know, very anti-Scott Burns production, and he was one of the guys that did like Obituary, Death, Pestilence. I think he did Pestilence. I can't remember. He probably did a Gorguts album. He did a lot of things for Roadrunner bands. So that is the only Darkthrone I have. Around 95, I got into Cradle of Filth. And still to this day, I can listen to Principle of Evil Made Flesh. I love the production on it. I'm not big on the really lo-fi production when it comes to black metal. I like good production. It doesn't have to be pristine. I just want to be able to hear all the instruments. And I do like bass, and if I can hear the bass, even better. This album has some of my favorite. Summer Dying Fast is a great closer on this album. Nick Barker plays this ride pattern that is just awesome. This had, what was it? A Dream of Wolves and Snow, which had Darren from Anathema doing spoken word. I just loved this album. It was something totally different than what I was listening to at the time, and that was the era where I was listening to a lot of King Crimson and stuff like that too. That was the first year and the year that I saw the King Crimson. It was just an odd thing for me to listen to at the time. Then came Vampire, and the production level went up a couple notches from Principle. This was an EP They redid Forest Whispers My Name, which ended up being a lot better than the original on Principle of Evil Made Flesh. But this wasn't quite as strong of, it only had 6 songs, but it did have Ebony Dressed for Sunset, which was really kind of bringing it up a notch with speed too at that time. This album was eagerly anticipated in, what year did this come out? 1996. Yeah, there was a place called Root Cellar Records in Minneapolis, St. Paul, and in Minnesota, and man, this was exciting when it came out. Danny's vocals are crazy. They are hard to listen to sometimes, and there's they really got their Iron Maiden influences going on this. And at this point, I don't even know if you can really consider them black metal. There's so much gray area when it comes to black metal. Their production was way too high for kind of true black metal and stuff like that. There is one part on, I think, the song Dusk in Her Embrace where there's a bass part. If you listen to it, he plays and it ends up being like meow 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 meow, and it's just ridiculous. Haunted Shores, though, Kronos from Venom does a spoken word part, and holy shit, that is well worth having this album for. Just, he says something like nestled vipers to my breast. I can't remember exactly what he says right now, and they're not in the lyrics, otherwise I would have them memorized. But just the spoken word part at the end is just so majestic and awesome. Then came Cruelty and the Beast, which was all about Elizabeth Bathory. I remember listening to this quite a bit when it came out. It came out in 98, I believe, yeah. And this is the 2-disc version. But this came out in 98. I sold it. I sold all my Cradle of Filth at one point, and then rebought them. That's why it still has this price tag on there. This is kind of more of the same with the Dusk and Embrace stuff. This is kind of where I jump off. There were some really cool songs. I just can't remember which ones were the best. My problem with Cradle of Filth is they have too many songs that are just keyboard interludes, but they still call them something, so I always get confused as to which song is which. Except for like Forest Mist. The first album is a little different. This is the last one I get. It's Midian. The last time I listened to this came out, I believe, after Cruelty. This J.K. Potter artwork is just atrocious. I remember when people would pay him to do these really shitty photoshopped things. It was just so bad. Like, look at this. Look at that. That's just... I mean, you do what you gotta do. Look at Martin. He looks ridiculous. What is that? That's just ridiculous. Yeah, the band stuff is awful. Look at this. It looks like somebody just learned how to use Photoshop there. But he got paid. Let me make sure I'm criticizing the right person. Yeah, I can't find where it says who did it. He did a lot of books too, and he was a little better when he did the books. I think there was like a higher threshold of quality for that. But yeah, that cover artwork is just not good either. Ugh. Remember when people did Photoshop and just dumb stuff? So the other band that I got into pretty late in the game was Enslaved. This is very much in that whole Viking black metal phase, or type. This one's kind of hard to listen to for me because the production's kind of Same with this one. I loved the cover though. This is called Frost. These early ones I can't really even tell you specific names of songs that are good. This one has decent playing on it, but the production of the drums kind of sound... I've heard somebody mention they sound like cardboard. I don't think they're that bad, but, you know, early stuff by Enslaved has kind of rougher production. This is kind of where they get a little better production. Bloodheim, and then they had a guy named Roy Kronheim in the band at this time. He was the second guitarist, and this album is just absolutely abrasive, I guess could be a good word. It's just brutal. At least the last time I listened to it, I thought it was. Mardheim, Beyond the Within. This is where they started going a little bit proggy, you know, letting their influences, their 70s influences kind of shine through a little bit, still keeping the, you know, like the Viking black metal kind of feel. This is, if you don't like the raw stuff, if you want a little bit more if you want a little bit more technicality in the playing and the songwriting, this is where to start. Monumentum, Convoys to Nothingness, the voices, it starts out so good. There is, on either this one or the previous one, there is a like a Viking chanty song that is super cool. And this, they get a little bit more proggy. This is where they just totally lose their shit and almost go full on prog. This is where the keyboards start becoming a big thing. I don't know if you can see that. This is Below the Lights. I have to hold on to the CD case because As Fire Swept Clean the Earth starts out with Mellotron, and it is fantastic. If the production was a little cleaner on this, this would be 100% album. At the end of As the Fire Swept Clean the Earth, their drummer at the time, who I think his name was Dirge Rip or something like that. I cannot remember what his name was. Let's see. Dirge Rep. Dirgerep. Isedale, Arve Eisdal, starts playing lead guitar on this album also. And yeah, you can really tell the difference. This is where clean vocals really... clean vocals had started showing up in the last two albums, but this one, it takes place even more. The Dead Stare has just an amazing ending that actually I think would be great for like a runway show. I don't know. Or maybe it was The Crossing. I'm not sure. Dead Stare or The Crossing. But Queen of Night starts out with this like flute being played and just does this really folky kind of almost Jethro Tull sounding thing. But in the middle, in the bridge, it goes into this thing that they're playing like measures of, I think, 5 and measures of 7 or something. I've never been able to figure out the count. Havenless has that total like Viking chant going on. The last 2 songs, I can't remember those quite as much, but this is just an amazing album. This was kind of my first go at Enslaved, and this is, if you want to start at what I think is the best album, and everything is downhill from there technically, Below the Lights is it. This is where their production values just start going crazy. This has a new drummer named God, what is his name? Named Cato Beckevold. And they also get a guy named Herbrand Larson, who also plays keyboards in Audrey Horne, if you've ever heard them. I have their first album, but they are nothing like Enslaved. Issa just brings up the production like 10 times better. And their stuff gets a bit less black metal. The vocals still have Grutel, I think his name is, still doing the black metal-y kind of stuff. Sorry about that. But Herbrand, the keyboard player, he ends up doing a lot of clean vocals. Rune, this was the first tour that I actually saw them on. I've seen them on a couple tours. This one, they have one song, I think it is the title track, which sounds very much like a Tool song. Has that bum ba-dum ba-dum dum bum ba-dum bum bum da-dum da kind of bass line going on. Vertebrae, I started losing a little bit less interest in them on this one. I then saw them on the Axiom Ethica Odini. Around this time in their discography, they kind of hit a plateau. Especially, around this era too. And I honestly haven't listened to these a lot over the first, initial listen. They're good. They're just not as good as like Monumentum, Below the Lights. What's the other one? Maradrum or something like that. Mardurarum? Yeah. Then you have Retier. This is the fancy 2-disc. There's a DVD. I don't even know what's on the DVD. It's the Behind the Veil, the making of Retier, the band, studios, and artwork. Honestly, if you want to make a making of, start when you're tracking the drums so we can watch the drummer. A lot of these bands, they start like halfway through the guitars, and all the really important stuff is already done. In Times kind of came in and left out. At this point, I kind of got a little tired of how Griddle does his vocals. They're kind of more of the same, kind of sounded a little phoned in. But their newest album, Enslaved E, are we supposed to look at it this way or that way? I don't know. This one was a pleasant surprise. This one was pretty good. I'm super bad with names on new albums these days, so... But this one, if you want some of the newer stuff after Rune, check out this one. Another band that I totally got into was Primordial. And these first two albums, Irma and A Journey's End, they still have that kind of raw black metal feel to them. His voice he's not singing quite as much. But he does start singing a little more on Spirit in the Earth Aflame. The production is better, and Storm Before Calm is where they decide to get rid of a little bit of the black metal feel. I mean, to me, it seems they get rid of more of the just, I don't know, the rawness, and got a little bit more technical. Granted, the first song on here is nothing but just blast beats. It's just like, you know, the production goes up a lot more. This is my favorite album by them. I always call it Wilderness Gathering, but it's actually called The Gathering Wilderness. This is their first one on Metal Blade, and I gotta tell you, if Billy Anderson hadn't produced this, if the guy who produced the follow-up, which is called To the Nameless Dead, if this guy had produced this thing would be, this would be in my top 10 needs to go on a deserted island with me. It's still awesome, but the production is so muddy. It's so Billy Anderson, muddy production, and sorry about that. My actual phone tried to tell me I had a text, so... But yeah, if the Billy Anderson production had been like To the Nameless Dead, this would have been on every deserted island list. This does have some really great songs, especially Cities Carved in Stone. They do this thing where they build up and then just kind of drop down. Listen to it, you'll know what I mean. This one has great production. It has that kind of epic feel. His voice on the last one and this one gets really good, and it has just a super epic feel to it. Very kind of like Fallen Brothers, you know. If you listen to Primordial, you'll get what I'm talking about. You know, it's kind of almost like I don't know how to explain it. Just listen to them quickly. This album and this album, both pretty good. I haven't listened to them a ton. I remember this one being a bit better than this one. At this point, it was kind of more the same. I don't have their newest album because it was just kind of quick go through this band, Terror Propaganda. This is a band called Craft. This album and this album I'm not quite as familiar with, because when I grabbed Craft, I just want to listen to Fuck the Universe. This album is awesome. It's kind of got like that black and roll feel to it. Less blast beats and more kind of just straight ahead rock and roll almost, with a black metal feel. They have a couple after this. I just have never gotten them. The newest one just came out. Let's see. This is a newer band that I listen to, Oathbreaker. They're kind of a hardcore band with like a black metal singer on this album. Well, they play black metal kind of stuff, almost in that vein of Sunbather, I think they're called. The band with the pink cover, I can't remember what that was called. This album is pretty good. They do have a female singer, actually, and she does clean vocals and the screaming. This is their newest album, and there is a video. Just type in Oathbreaker official video, and I think it is called 1056 or something like that. And that video is awesome. It's just, their drummer is really awesome. I think he actually got replaced, but the new guy is pretty decent too from the live videos that I've seen. She does an amazing job vocally with the clean stuff and the screechy stuff. And remember, if you haven't heard black metal, which I'm assuming all of you have, black metal vocals are hard to get into at times, but when you get into them, you really get into them. It's weird. I do it. There's some points in my life where I'm just like, I don't want to hear any black metal ever right now. And like 6 months later, or when I get like in a foul, depressed mood or whatever, I'm like, yep, it's time to listen to some black metal. Drudk. I used to have some of their earlier stuff. It's a little more raw. This album sounds like, oh God, what's it? Tonight's Decision era, or the album right before he started singing clean, Catatonia stuff. They went from kind of extreme, kind of raw, folky black metal. I don't think any of their names, I don't think they do interviews at all, but this album is called A Handful of Stars, and it is just amazing. I know I say amazing all the time, but this is brutally amazing. It's just so great. I get into the music, and then when the guy does, I think his name is Roman, does the vocals, it's just, you can feel the anger on this album, and you usually can't. To me, black metal sometimes has that kind of cheesy quality to it that is just, you're like, that guy can't be that angry all the time. This album just sounds like he's just furious all the time, and it's so great, and the music is so great. But then they followed it up with Eternal Turn of the Wheel, and these guys use poetry from Ukrainian poets from like 1700s or earlier or whatever. Either way, it's before 1990s. This goes back to their roots more, but with better production. Same with this. I haven't listened to this one much. I got it kind of reluctantly when I wasn't in the mood for black metal, but I was like, oh shit, it's $6.95. That's kind of too good to turn down. And these guys were in a band called Old Silver Key. This album is more like the Handful of Stars, but it is a combination of that band with the singer of Alcest. His name is called Nige or Nige. This is very folky black metal that has a lot of clean vocals. This is like, these two projects are like, I call it post-black metal emo shoegazer music, because it is all of those things kind of wrapped into one. Old Silver Key has all the guys from Drudk with the singer of Alcest, and Alcest have quite a few. They have Le Secret. They are a French band, so you're gonna get a lot of French titles. By this time, he gets a drummer that is consistent, and I actually saw them open up for Anathema in Minneapolis. It was just a weird coincidence that I happened to be into both of the bands. Les Voyages I don't know how to speak French. And then this one is their newest one called Kodama. And this one I know nothing about. I've listened to this maybe once. You have to really be in the mood for this. It's post-black metal emo shoegazer. I mean, come on. Here is a band that I had stuff from. I believe I had this album, and then I sold it because I was like, screw this, I don't want to listen to black metal anymore. There was a point in my life where I would sell things. I'd get into moods for other stuff and then decide what in this collection I decided I would need to not ever listen to again. So I'd sell stuff. But about 5 years ago, I picked up all of the Deathspell Omegas. These are pretty brutal. I can't tell you tons about these albums because I haven't listened to them a ton. I am currently listening to them. I just have not gotten to them again. These are just, I'm just showing you the order they went in. This is the album that brought me into listening to these guys. It is called Drought, and it has a instrumental. Whoop. Hi everyone. It has an instrumental that kicks off the album. It's just an EP, but that instrumental is well worth purchasing this for. And then it goes into a song called Fiery Serpent. They do sing in English, so it is, you know, I like that about Deathspell Omega more than the next band and last band I'm going to tell you about. So they went kind of more mellow on this one. Production is fantastic on all of them, if I remember correctly, but the production got really good on this. And this one, Synarchy of Molten Bones, just came out this year. The reason I got this, besides the fact that I was like, okay, I'm in the shitty mood, I need to listen to some awesome black metal that's just aggressive and just you know, is somebody said on Amazon that this album was kind of like the black metal equivalent of Gorguts Obscura, where that album is just relentless. It does not let up. It is a barrage of the senses. It is a barrage of physical just endurance. And okay, so you compared it to Gorguts Obscura. Of course I'm gonna buy this. And I've only listened to a little bit of it, but so far I can totally understand where they're coming from with that comparison, because it is brutal. The last band that I will talk about, I got into these guys through a guy named Rob. He ran a distro? Is that how you call him? I can't even remember the name of the damn thing right now. But he had copies of The Shining that he said, hey, if you are going to get into black metal, get into Shining. And oh crap, I gotta talk about one other band before. Oh no, I sold it. Funeral Mist. Funeral Mist was the other band. I really shouldn't have sold that. That album was good. It was called Salvation. Well, apparently I have something else to rebuy. That is a freaking brutal album. That is so raw and so intense. The singer and the guitarist, who is the same guy, singer / guitarist from Funeral Mist, is the singer for Marduk now. But anyway, The Shining, Eerie Cold. This is their 4th album. I don't have the first 3 because I didn't like the production, or it just didn't grab me. This has Hellhammer on drums. There's a lot of triggered drums on this, but he plays his ass off, and this is where they really get what they call suicidal black metal tag going. Well, they did before, but for me, this is kind of like your introductory to suicidal black metal. The singer starts singing clean a little bit, or they have somebody singing clean. This version that Peaceville put out, it has like a spoken word thing at the beginning over the intro to the first song. So I have the disc, the regular disc, but I have a burned copy in here of what the original version of it sounded like, with no spoken word over that. And that's technically the one that I listen to when I do listen to this. My dogs are barking, apparently. Shining 5, Halmstead. This is probably everybody's favorite Shining album. It is fantastic. There's some really depressing shit on here. Beautiful, but depressing. There's a lot of spoken word stuff between sections. It's either on this one or this one, where he has a girl saying, you wake up and wonder why you're still alive, or something like that. I really like this band. They are a good way for me to get out of shitty moods and especially depressed moods. I've been listening to them for about 3 or 4 days now, and my mood has gotten better and better every day. Maybe that's because of this band. Maybe it's just because I got out of the funk I've been in, or whatever. But Klagos, I can't even pronounce that. That's the name. Shining 6. Cool thing about this band is, I don't know if it's on the last 2 albums, but they always have 6 songs. Yep, they always have 6 songs. I believe the 5th song is always instrumental. I think they've changed that up in the last 2 albums, but I'm not sure. I haven't listened to the last one the last one as much. I've only listened to that one a couple times. Number 7, I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce things because I will just slaughter the language, and I have respect over people's other language. You know, if I can't pronounce it, I'm not going to ruin it. I love this cover. It's so depressing. So awesome. This album starts with a voice singing, "You are my sunshine, my only sunshine." And it goes through, "Don't take my sunshine." And when he says "away," it goes, "ah." It's pretty creepy. My wife refuses to listen to the beginning of this. Well, she doesn't like any of this music, but she really didn't want to listen to the beginning of that because she's like, no, that's going to ruin that song for me. Refining Darkness I've listened to like 2 or 3 times in the last day, and this album is pretty damn awesome. He does sing some English on this. There are, let me see here, I'll just put this up for you. 1, 2. There are 3 tracks where he sings in English. Normally he sings in Swedish, I believe. I think they're from Sweden. This one I've been getting really familiar with. I try to listen to stuff at least 2 or 3 times before moving on to the next, but with Shining, 2 times is good enough, and you're just like, okay, I need to listen to what other stuff is on the other albums. This one, Everyone, Everything, Everywhere Ends. This album, I have a sticker on here still that I couldn't get off. It's just a bizarre cover. And this one, I'm not sure if he sings in English. I've only actually listened to this one once. Nope, looks like everything is in Swedish. But I like how it says, recommended if you like Watain, Catatonia, Cradle of Filth, Opeth, and Mayhem. That's, well, I guess they do have kind of an Opeth-y feel when they get into their mellow stuff, especially when they do like the clean vocals. And I can see the Catatonia reference. I can't see the Cradle of Filth reference, but I can totally get the Watain thing. Not so much Mayhem, though. And the last and final CD, I just bought this. I've listened to the first 3 songs on this, and I like it. I just really can't tell you anything about it. I'm hoping it's as good as, Refining Darkness. The one weird thing is that I'm looking at the liner notes or whatever, and it says mixed, mastered by Andy LaRock and produced by Andy LaRock and Nicholas Kavorth. I think that's the singer's last name. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it. But Andy LaRock actually plays a guitar solo on one of the songs. So if you want to see what that solo is, it is track 3 on this, which is called, oh geez, everything's in Swedish. Jag är un frund. I'm awful at other languages. So, if you want to hear what Andy LaRock sounds like playing a guitar solo for a black metal band, check this out. Hopefully, this gives you a kind of a good overview of some kind of more obscure black metal, or, not the Mayhems or the, well, I had Cradle of Filth in there, or the Dimmu Borgir style stuff. As I've said before, the production on most of these is pretty good. Some of them are a little rawer than others, but all these bands tend to evolve from album to album. They may plateau at one point or another, but they're still, I think, doing stuff that normally isn't found in black metal. So, hopefully you like that.